Boom, and we're live. Thanks everybody for joining into another episode of Men with Purpose. Today I'm joined by the great Alexander Cottle. Alexander is a coach, a holistic counselor, and the founder of the Unmasked Man. The Unmasked Man is basically a community of men committed to redefining masculinity, to take the journey, the hero's journey from boyhood to becoming a king. Alexander, thank you very much for doing this, sir.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Pavel. Thank you for welcoming me.
This is all mine. I like to start these podcasts with just taking a deep breath and just doing a quick check and maybe sharing whatever is present for you right now. So whenever you're ready, let's take a deep breath.
So I'm feeling awake, I'm feeling ready, I'm feeling present, and I'm feeling excited.
Nice. I'm checking in with a lot of gratitude and a lot of presence as well. I think the last couple of days has been particularly stressful for me, so it's really good to kind of start the weekend with one of these conversations. Really kind of always kind of grounds me and puts things in perspective for me. So I'm checking in with that. All right.
Aho.
Yeah. Man, I'm curious about your journey. It sounds like you have your fingers in a lot of pies. You're doing a lot of things. So I'm curious, what was life like for you before you kind of got into men's work and more kind of this lifestyle really of being a coach, holistic practitioner, etc., etc. What was that before and what's that after? How did you find the work even?
Yeah, I found it through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. I felt like I had no choice. So if I was to backtrack and go back 7 years, even probably 10 years, you know, at 21 years old, I kind of denied. Actually, I'm 34 now, so more than 10 years. At 21 years old, I kind of denied myself a spiritual awakening, so to speak. I definitely had something go on for me, and I didn't really know what was moving in me, and it kind of made me feel a little bit scared, and I kind of ran to the city life, and I moved up to London and ticked all the boxes and moved up the corporate ladder and ran in that hamster wheel, and and I was a victim of my own success. I was very young. I became a design director. I was doing interior architecture. I was very good at it, and it was my passion. I love design. It's always been a big part of my life. But as the money started to flow in, so did the kind of I wasn't really knowing what I wanted. I didn't really have a purpose. I felt a bit lost, and I started to spend money on things that were not serving me, addictive patterns, hanging out with people that were really not true friends. They were more there for the money or for the alcohol or for the drugs. And I kind of, as the pressure built more and more, I just became very toxic inside. I feel I'm very disconnected from myself as a man. I had a girlfriend at the time that I'm ashamed to say I was cheating on. So there was disharmony there. I was doing a lot of cocaine. I was doing a lot of alcohol, as I said. And I ended up working for a company, flying to the States a lot. So flying to LA, flying to New York, and it all looked great on paper. It looked fantastic and, you know, luxurious. But I was really, really dying inside. And essentially it got to the point I was coming off the back of a business trip to LA. Went to New York. I remember the offices were near Central Park, and I just finished the day there. And for 2 weeks, I'd kind of felt a pain in my abdomen, and it was just intensifying with this like stress and pressure and stress and pressure. And I was walking back past Central Park, went to my hotel, got up to my room, and then suddenly I just had this pain transfer down the left-hand side of my body. down my left leg, down my left arm, all down my left face. And it just all went completely numb. My tongue dropped. I couldn't talk. I was panicked. Grabbed the phone, put it on my chest and called for an ambulance. And that was kind of the beginning of what changed me. I realized that I had a TIA, I believe it's called, which is a stroke that didn't clot at 27 years old. And I was like, oh my God. But for a long time, I knew something wasn't right. 6 months prior, I'd damaged my leg and spent a lot of time in solitude and alone, working at home. And it was just a consequence of everything. And this then led me to depression, led me to attempted suicide. And that started what I denied at 21, at 27 later on, my spiritual awakening, and enabled me to have no choice at all in searching out teachers, in trying to find knowledge, in trying to transform and change and just do anything that would get me out of the pain that I was suffering, because it was like minute to minute, suicidal thoughts every day, depression every day, just like fear of people, fear of society, like just being in my room. And it was just horrendous, like looking back at it. And I did try and go down the Western medicine path. I'd always been a spiritual person. I'd always had spirituality in my life in some concept from a young age. And the Western approach didn't work for me. I remember filling out a score sheet for, suicide, like how suicide awareness am I, or like what, how bad am I, right? And I scored too high, and they said, we can't help you. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't help me? It's like so I didn't grasp the concept of like this very one-dimensional approach. So instantly I then started seeking teachers in the UK, and that took me to like a Taoist teacher, and then another teacher that worked with zero balancing and like harmonizing the energies and working with the chakra system. And then I found myself on this journey I ended up in Portugal, and then Portugal took me out to Southeast Asia, and then that took me to India, and then Southeast Asia and Austria, and back to India and Southeast Asia again, and Bali and Southeast Asia again. It's just like, and that was just a combination of everything from yoga to meditation to Buddhism, Vipassanas, plant medicine, Reiki, incredible teachers. I study more Advaita Vedanta now, so I look through the eyes of the universe in that approach. And then evidently I found men's work, and men's work was a huge part of my transformation, because in the early years of my spiritual development, I was actually saying this to a man yesterday, I was spiritually bypassing and going to the oneness, going up there, going to the light, and ignoring all the psychological issues of the human being. And what I realized with men's work, you have a framework, you have a structure to understand your shadow and your psychological traumas, beliefs, patterns, etc. And it gave me a compass to maneuver that I couldn't find in any other area. I looked in yoga, and I looked in Buddhism, and I looked in other forms, but those didn't necessarily deal with the psychological issues. And so I would say the last 4 years especially have been like shadow work, psychological issues. And don't get me wrong, I still love going and touching the oneness and trying to live as mindful as possible, but I'm really all about now trying to bring about the awareness into where is my shadow playing out and causing havoc, and where am I self-sabotaging, where am I causing myself limiting beliefs, etc. So that's a long-winded answer.
No, but perhaps
how I found
perhaps a very needed one, because I think, at least from what I've seen, there's a lot of both men and women suffering. I think women are a little bit more naturally attuned to be able to seek help and be around other women and be able to share this, whereas men a little bit like, you know, put on the mask and that's it. Like the war is there. I'm just going to see every challenge is a wall that I need to go through. And yeah, I'm going to lick my wounds in private. And there's a lot of suffering happening in silence that we don't see. So I'm very grateful that you went so deep and so elaborate in what actually happened, because you know, as perhaps as corny as this may sound, this wound is probably the biggest gift that you can give to the world, right? All of this experience, all of this suffering that you went through, you're able to project it now through a lot more creative ways, and, you know, in not so much the shadow, but really in, you know, bring this into the light and be able to share it with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why underneath my logo for the Unmasked Man is vulnerability is courage. And my wound is the biggest gift that I can transmit to the world, because I remember being in the early years of my self-development, just wanting to be like, I'm fixed, I'm better, I'm okay. And actually, like, it's when I go back to that place and I talk about my wound now, 7 years on, that people can relate. They don't want to see a person and be like, they want to know their story. Like it's just not black and white. You didn't just get from here to here like that. It's not that easy. It's hard. And like, I'm not trying to put a negative on that and say it's hard. It takes courage. It does take perseverance. It does take self-compassion and self-love, and not just driving over your emotions and, oh, I'm going to get through this and put my head down and just go, go, go. It's like there were days where I had to sit and fucking feel and cry and go into the wound and just absolutely be in my true surrender and vulnerability to all that is. But and there will be many more days still to come where I'm going to have to do that, right? It's never ending. But it is amazing what we can transcend if we really rise to the occasion, and our consciousness starts to evolve and starts to heighten, and we're able to see these pains for what they are and detach from our thoughts and detach from our self-limiting beliefs.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I think also people want to see progress, right? They don't want to see this kind of like perfect, quote unquote, spiritual guru, man, woman, whatever. They want to be able to know, okay, what actually happened for you to come here? And, you know, you being able to share this is, I think, incredibly important for people to be able to relate to your message, your story, your experience, etc. You mentioned the shadow, and that's something that I like to dive in a little bit deeper, because it's it's not talked enough about it, and it's a trigger topic for, I think, not just a lot of men, but just for a lot of people in general. So from your experience, could you perhaps give a little bit of a summary of what the shadow is and how is it manifesting, and why is it important to dive deep and really look at it in the face and work with that?
So the way I work, and in particular, I work with the 4 archetypes based on Robert Moore, who has taken it from Carl Jung, and the book written by Robert Moore, King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover. And to me, the shadow is anything that the subconscious mind suppresses, anything that we are not seeing, that we can't be aware of, that is playing out as a conditioned pattern that is kind of moving through us with a very low vibrational energy, and we're not quite picking it up, right? And this is the beauty of men's work, because when you're in the presence of men that are really doing the work, you can have these mirrors, have these reflections to find that within yourself that you cannot see. Excuse me. And it's so important, because no one became enlightened envisaging figures of white light, right? Carl Jung again. Right? And I love that saying, because it's in the darkness that we really find our way out. And we don't find our way out in the darkness by pushing it away. We find our way out in the darkness by bringing it into the light and bringing it into the heart and loving it and noticing all these parts of us that play out. So the shadow to me is like anger that I cannot accept about myself, jealousy, suppressed emotions, admitting to myself that I have parts in me that want to cause, pain and suffering to the world because of the pain and suffering that I received at some point in my life. We all have these little bits playing out in us to various degrees, right? The mind is a marketplace. And once we can identify these characters, and again, this is what the archetypes give me, they give me a compass to identify these characters, then we can transcend them, we can become aware of them, and we can be like, oh, I'm becoming that guy again. And going back to people that say they're a guru or just sit in the light, it's like I try with my groups as much as I can to encourage us that we're all kings amongst kings, right? So there's not a hierarchy. I'm holding the space. I have to have some form of presence to hold the space, but ultimately we're all men on our journey, helping and mirroring and learning and teaching each other. And I'm constantly pulling up my shadow in front of the men, because I know my shadows so well now, and I'm really like, and still they're playing out because they're so conditioned, they're so in us. So yeah, pulling myself up. And I think it helps also having a partner. So I'm in a beautiful relationship, and she, again, when the feminine is doing the work, you can't hide from her mirror. So every now and again when I go into my little boy, like not that it's bad to go into the little boy in the sense of, if he feels sad, if he feels neglected, then hold him, love him, reparent him and father him. But if I'm acting from my boy psychology of erratic behavior and boyishness and or stupid patterns that I just need to look at and address, then she will pull me up on that, or another man will pull me up on that, and I'll be like, God, thank you. And then again, I'm not going to punish him. I'm going to love him. I'm going to accept that part of him, but I don't want to act from him. And I think that's the biggest part.
Wow. Beautifully put. I think it's important what you mentioned, that oftentimes people, when they kind of realize this or come to some sort of a realization, that they begin to go even harder on themselves and kind of scorn this little boy and girl that we all have, regardless of emotions and feelings. It is there. There's ancestral traumas that most likely everybody inherited through generations. You can look into epigenetics and things like that. So yeah, it is there. And just like knowing that, the boy or the girl also needs love, also needs reassurance, also needs parenting, fatherhood, motherhood, etc. So yeah.
I love the saying, the boy is the slave to the ego, right? I really like that. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean that we're going to punish him. We're going to reparent him and re-educate him, re-educate our ego, that we don't have to, because the boy is getting pulled like, oh, look, shiny object. Oh, look, woman. Oh, look, sugar, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, right? Yeah. Whatever it is. Yeah. It just goes. The boy is just like, woohoo. And it's like that man's psychology that holds us, that consciousness, that presence, that king energy, whatever you want to call it, holds the boy and says, come on, we've been down this route 100 times. Yeah. We know how it ends. Yeah. Let's go a different way this time. And he's like, really? And you're like, yeah, please, come on.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. I really genuinely believe, the more I got into this work over the last maybe 2-3 years or so, I really feel that there is a lack of fathering in the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. There's a lot of man-child running around with the kind of abusive relationships to some kind of, whether it's drugs, pornography, women, alcohol, some kind of an addiction. And yeah, this father archetype we've kind of pushed away, and whether it's societal, and I think there's it's quite a complex topic, I think, to get into, but we definitely need a lot more fathering in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. We have boys initiating boys. And this is part of the self-development journey, is not just touching the oneness, but reparenting your own psychological patterns. And, it's not easy. Thankfully, I have certain men in my life that I class as elders. They're not just older than me. but they just have a certain knowledge as well, and they've passed knowledge down to me, or I've attended workshops or courses where I've been able to grow as a man, and then I can pass that information down and help in any way which I can. And it's a process and a lineage that has lost there's been a disconnect between the elders and the young men. There's not as many of those men offering that around, but it is changing. It is changing, and men are more open to receiving and to meeting and to changing their patterns and addressing toxic behavior.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, this kind of ties into one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well. Yes, we've lost a lot of elders. Yes, there aren't rich rites of passage or ritual initiations, or whatever label you want to put on this, perhaps as previous cultures. But I do see a resurgence, perhaps by virtue of speaking to men like yourself and other men who are doing the work. Where do you see, and I think we kind of went from back in the 60s type of macho alpha male guy with, no heart but a lot of spine, versus now to perhaps a little bit too feminized men, which are all heart and no spine, to right now coming back into someone in the center.
Yeah, this is that argument, isn't it, about the soft man and that has evolved. Yeah, look, it's about balance, right? I mean, I am deeply, deeply passionate about men's work, but ultimately we are human beings incarnated as a man or a woman, right? And we have masculine and feminine energies moving through us. The laws of the universe, everywhere you look, is masculine and feminine energies, the polarities playing out, and they fluctuate every single second of every single day through our bodies, through our beings. So don't get me wrong, I love men's work. The men are sitting there growing. The women are doing the same. But ultimately, it's transcending both and realizing that we're human beings with these two fragrances, with these two energies. And it's not about being, as you said, this man with the spine that just completely, the sadist warrior that overdrives his emotions and doesn't actually connect with the world. And then it's also not about being the coward or the wimp or the doormat and just being a pushover and having no boundaries and just giving up, or being the detached manipulator who just sits on a rock and thinks his life away and gets lost in the cosmos of the world and doesn't have this human experience, right? So again, this is why I can't stop harping on about it. For me, the archetypes have played out so much in my life, because every time, if I'm like a car driving down a road and then I start to veer off and I'm going on to like the terrain and I'm like getting all bumpy, it's like, I've gone way over towards my lover, my addictive shadow of the lover, or now I'm back over in the magician, or I'm being the sadist as the warrior, or like, I'm the tyrant king now. And it's like they just bounce me back onto the road, and it just keeps me going in the same direction. And where before I knew about this information, I would end up going down a path, spiraling, turning around 100 times, having no clear direction and not knowing how to find my way out of it. And getting lost in a character, or getting lost in a part of my shadow that was quite strong in me. So for me now, finding that balance, looking at that roadmap and coming back to this direction, to this focus, and finding it in between this hard and soft polarity, right? It's always the middle way. That is the spiritual path, is always the middle way that I've learned. It's not about this extreme or that extreme. Just come to the middle and you'll find your way out.
I'm kind of thinking, I agree with this. I'm kind of also on the same wavelength, if you will, that it is always somewhere between the balance. If you take it to the extreme, this is where, if you use the king or magician archetype framework, then you always get to these kind of shadow sides, which are not really serving you in a way that is probably constructive or productive. And I think before I, discovered these archetypes, I wasn't really aware of what that is. I wasn't really exposed to Carl Jung's framework, so to speak, and then Gillette and Moore. But I'm not sure if this framework, this type of archetype work is given actually enough credit, because it's so powerful, yet obviously a lot difficult to actually really embody it and practice it on a daily basis, because it does require a lot of attention, and you have to be in a certain frame of mind to be really aware. Oh shit, I'm again leaning into my shadow side, or maybe the inner child is a little bit more loud than it should be. I'm not sure if this is given enough credit of the magnitude that it has on, I think, on human beings, not just men and women, but in general.
Yeah, it's a shadow of mine actually, because I work with these archetypes every single day that I just presume everyone knows about them, and of course they don't. And the men that come on the trainings that we run, it's educating them in them and helping them learn and understand them, and then seeing that they can change their life is really really beautiful. And I get men that either really resonate with the archetypes and they absolutely want to come on the courses, and they're like, oh my God, this is totally me. Or other men just turn around and go, no, I don't really like the archetypes, I'd rather go another way. And it's like, there isn't one size fits all. It's like, what resonates with you? I got brought up with, and again, this is very much Carl Jung and the mythology within a man, but I got brought up with stories of King Arthur as a young boy. We went to Tintagel, and Merlin and the warrior knights and the kings, and that was around me as a boy all the time. I remember watching so many movies in that era, and my mum had pre-Raphaelite paintings on the wall. So, and that all kind of comes through in our courses actually, in the graphics that I've chosen. Is like it's quite striking imagery that resonates with, and other men won't have that. Other men connect more with a modern day superhero of like the Avengers or Star Wars, or, do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's funny, but I do believe like Carl Jung, we have these parts of our psyche that resonate with the hero, resonate with overcoming good and evil. It's in our very society, our ancestral lineage of storytelling and waking up something, especially within a man, that can this overcoming hardship, or winning the battle. It's a beautiful journey.
I never really thought about it that way, that I'm like 31 right now, soon to be 32, and I too grew up with the King Arthurs and this kind of the mystic magician and the warrior and the lover, and now you kind of see perhaps interpretations of this, or slightly different versions in what we're seeing right now in superheroes and Star Wars, etc., which is kind of associated all to this kind of the hero's journey. But Joseph Campbell, I think people have probably read or at least heard about this, which is kind of the universal myth that every kind of story is based upon. So yeah, like you said, there is no universal silver bullet that's going to work for you, and that's kind of all of it. No, it's just, there's a lot of flavors, there's a lot of nuances. So what might resonate with me might not resonate with you, and vice versa. But it's important to be able to kind of see that there is more than one way to accomplish something, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's finding what resonates with you, and then learning that. That's what I would say. And I wouldn't say just because you don't get on with the archetypes, don't look at men's work. There's various different other forms of men's work out there. Not everyone uses the archetypes, but if you do like the archetypes and you like that format, I think there's so much gold to be had there.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same mindset right now, probably because I'm also doing a lot of work with my own shadow, integrating it, which is a journey on its own. It's gonna there we go, exactly. Yeah, so all right.
Hard, right? It's painful. It's like, oh, this is my shit again. Okay.
Oh, dude. And it, like one thing you mentioned, I want to just to kind of close off that point as well, is whenever you're in a partnership, in a relationship. Having that partner to, especially if she's also doing her work, holding that mirror, like, what are you doing right now, man? Like, what is happening here? And you're like, oh, just like, oh, again. I even made a video probably a year ago saying that if men really wanted to if want to kind of achieve personal growth or 10x, I don't know how I called it, get in a relationship. That's really gonna test, especially with a conscious woman that really kind of has her shit, and that's really gonna take you to the next level, like 0 to 1.
Absolutely, yeah. My partner's learning to be a love, sex, and relationship coach with Layla Martin, who's very well renowned in the kind of female self-development work, and she comes back with knowledge every day because it's a year course. And it's just mirroring shit to me, and I'm like, oh my god, you get the shadow of the ego going, oh, I know so much about men's work, and I know this and that, and then she comes in and just completely like puts me back in my place.
You're like, oh shit, I need to up my game.
Yeah, it is like that. You don't want to get left behind. You want to be the man that is mirroring her, rising into her goddess.
And I think this also goes to show that no matter how spiritually developed, evolved you are, there's always levels to this game. There's always going to be problems, but these are good quality problems, right? These are problems of an evolved, human beings. 1 + 1 = 11 sort of interpersonal relationship, as opposed to 1 + 1 = 1.5, where you have people who are kind of attached to one another, and everybody kind of struggling with something, with the problem, but it's just, you want to have these good quality problems, if it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's also like we can get caught in this trap of like workshop junkies, and self-development junkies. And I think actually stopping for a moment where we are, obviously you've got the spiritual side coming into presence and stopping, but I'm talking from the human side, stopping and just going, hang on a sec, I've come so far, I've achieved so much, I've done so much good work. And this is about compassion every day, and like not being hard on yourself, and accepting those shadowed parts, and accepting the perfectionist. That's been a big part for me in the achievement trap. When I was in London, this like, oh, I want more. When I get more, I'll be happy. And then you get there and then you're not happy, and so on and so forth. So I think from a human experience, just really sitting with how much you have achieved, and really taking count of where you are, and finding blessings in the small things is so important.
I think, creating some kind of a review, or taking some time to really slow down, be able to normalize slowing down, because we're kind of a little bit victims of our own progress, right? We're overstimulated with things happening, Instagram and technology and like this and the shiny objects, and like, when do you actually take time to take a step back and just see the long road you've been on, and all the journey, all the experiences that you've had? And that's why I do every year. I do like a yearly review. Like, what are the things that happen in my life? What are the things I'm grateful for? Some magic moments, etc., etc. And it sounds so simple, but not that many people. Again, perhaps I'm generalizing here, but I don't see that many people taking the time to really think about what happened.
That's really beautiful. I do that, and I do a bit of dream boards as well. So where I want to go, and visualization, and working with that, and then taking time to reflect and see where I've been. But trying not to live in either, trying not to live in past or future again.
That's a good point. Yeah. It's a balance, like you said in the beginning.
It's always a balance.
Right. Let's say someone is actually listening to us right now, and maybe they're not necessarily on this path yet, and they're a man, maybe they're stuck in a job, and now recently we know things are difficult, right, for everybody, especially I think for men, especially mentally being isolated, etc. What do you think men are missing today, and also what do you think they can do to kind of perhaps embark on a slightly different journey if they're unhappy with their job? And I mean, probably a big question, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Well, what do you think men are missing? You obviously work with men, and is there kind of a theme that it kind of protrudes and seems to be a universal one?
Yeah, I mean, to answer it, I'll probably go back to my journey. Is like, I did what I almost was told to do. So from school and then college, university, whatever, I ended up being the man that I thought I was meant to be. So basically, I gave my power away to everyone else, and I told them almost like who I should be. And then it got to a certain age, and although I was passionate about design and I was doing it, I wasn't living my purpose. And if I'm not connecting to my purpose, you know, David Data, the way of the superior man, it's like a man will follow his purpose, and by admitting that is his main mission in life, is his everything, before his family, before his partner, even though that's hard for other people to understand or accept. If he can accept that, and if he can work that out and find it and really connect with it, then he will live a fulfilled life. How do we find that? Well, we find that through listening. But obviously the world, like you said, with all the shiny objects, is very overstimulated, that we find it hard to listen. And we are, from an early age, told almost like what we should be. So I think men arrive, you know, after their 20s, in their 30s, they could have a kid by then, they could have a car, they could have a house, and they're just absolutely overwhelmed, and they're kind of like, well, how did I end up here? And I'm not really living my dharma, my life purpose. I'm not really alive. I don't feel alive. And so then maybe I go into a depression, and I'm kind of living in what I would call the impotent lover, where every day is gray, and I can't see the color in life, and I just don't feel connected to the universe. And so I think a man needs to try and understand what makes him feel alive. And again, this is the beauty of men's work, because I think once he can start listening and speaking and connecting with brothers, he can start really asking these questions with great reflection and great mirroring. Because, you know, I know many men that come to men's circles and say they're in a toxic relationship. That will get shown. That mirror will get shown. Or if they're in a good relationship, that will also get shown. So you'll either have the mirror of like the man is scared to commit and doesn't want to commit to what could be an incredible relationship, or the man that's in a toxic relationship, but he needs the mirror to see that actually maybe he needs to end that. And so it's life moments like this that can then send him off onto his purpose. So this is why this work is so important, because it can reflect back to us areas that we are not seeing and help us find our way. And of course, men that journey together can rise in consciousness together. So if you've got other men living their purpose and you start gravitating towards them, you're going to naturally find yours. Yeah, but it's a big question to answer. And there's not a simple answer.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you bring in the purpose of topic, because it is a Man with Purpose podcast. So a lot of men, I think, are actually, and still for me for a very long time, like, what is this purpose? What's this notion? Do you create it? Do you find it? What is it? Is it the same as being on your mission? So there's a little bit, I think, confusion there, and perhaps, again, too much information and not enough actually going within and listening and trying to connect. Okay, what is actually making me feel alive? What's the thing I'm doing? And that's probably going to give the most value to the world. So yeah, I'm glad you brought this up.
But once you find it, you are a man on fire. You are a trailblazer. You are absolutely unstoppable. And I don't mean that in an egocentric way. You just go. You just go. And actually your purpose can change as well.
Sure.
So, you know, as you get older, maybe you need to go down one path to then go to another. So you might end up a lot later on in life and you're like, actually, I don't want to give back. I don't want to teach anymore. I want to just sit and meditate and really be present, or now I want a family, or, you know, it's not just like, it might not just be that for the rest of our life. So being open to change and realizing how the universe is sending me this way. And then I've learned those lessons and I've given that back to the world. And now maybe this is a different purpose.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's not necessarily static. I think that, you know, you go through different stages of life, and obviously priorities are shifting and changing, and some of that might stay, but yeah, you're probably going to be seeing life through a very different lens in your 50s and 60s than you were in your 30s, for example. So
absolutely.
Yeah. You know, talking about, you know, changing in life and, you know, getting older, etc., etc. What do you think we can do as men to help other generations and young kids? Because I genuinely think, like, what's happening right now with so much technology, they're like super confused. I remember the days like we didn't have phones and laptops, and I was probably one of the happiest persons alive, right? I was just outside playing in the dirt. And now I think there's a lot of, yeah. What do you think we can do? We can do as men to help future generations.
Um, I think the more men that consciously awake at a younger age as young adults, before they go on to have children, so they're doing the work prior. So I'm yet to have a child, and I hope that when I do, I'm a good father. So we've got that generation that are doing the work that can then, once they father, they will teach that boy, and so on and so forth. So we'll almost like reset the wheel. And this is why, in particular, men our age, and this is kind of my largest demographic of men that I work with, kind of men ranging between 25 and 40. If they're doing the work, and it's not just guys in their 50s or 60s, then the future generations are really going to have a foot up, because you've got elders then helping young men, right? And the more we can work with young men at an early age, and we can show them that it's okay to feel, it's okay to express their emotions, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be vulnerable, and also show them the art of commitment and the art of discipline with self-compassion and the art of self-mastery and the art of action, then we can bring that balance between harmonizing those energies. I think young men need to be around older men from a young age. The art of initiation, that's what used to happen, right? So when we have fathers leaving, my father left at the age of 11, right? So he was in my life a little bit in my teens, but he wasn't. I needed my father as a man. I needed my father, and that's a wound I carry to this day, and one that I'm still processing. And it's like, I think a lot of men can resonate with that. And I hope that when I father one day, I'm going to be there. If I have a son, for that very important period. Of course, it's important for a woman or a daughter as well, but especially for a young man, he needs that presence. And so if he can have those elders in his life, and there's fantastic schemes out there. There's men doing the work. There's one in the UK called Journeyman, and they take young men aged between, I think it's 11 and 16, and they take them away for weekends, and they do everything from making your own knives to building fires and camping and really connecting and rewilding, right? And like, this is fantastic. And I've got two nephews. I've got one that's 12 and one that's coming up 15, and even realizing I need to be in their life more, and it's a shadow that I hold. I wish I spent more time with them. I've been traveling a lot. I came back last year because of COVID. I haven't really been able to see them, and I'm picking them up next weekend, and they're going to spend a few days with me. And it's like, I really want to start being in their life more, because I owe them that as well. I have a lot of valuable knowledge to give them. I don't mean that arrogantly. I mean, I want to be part of their lives, and I think I can be there in a way that maybe other men in their life aren't, due to the path that I've walked. And and I want them to know as they grow up that they can always come to me, and that all those things I talked about vulnerability, about showing your emotion, are okay. And that they won't get any shame, they won't get any guilt, or they won't get the fist or the back of the hand from me. I will support them in their growth. And so the more we can affect the young, the more we can transform the future. But also the more we can transform, in our generation now, then before we have children, we're going to consequently have a positive effect on future sons.
Dude, wow. I'm just getting lit up inside, like just listening to you, because I think it's perhaps also the inner child of mine. When I was 13, 14, 15, 16, I was just yearning for this kind of masculine role model. My father was there, but he wasn't really present. I think he tried to do his best with what he had, but he also carries wounds from his father's generations, etc., etc. So being able to have a mentor like this in someone's life, like, who knows what the trajectory of my life could have been if I had that kind of man, to like a uncle or a fatherly figure to tell me, to kind of enlighten me about how to what's happening in the world versus what society tells us things should be, and checking all the boxes. Wow.
I know. I missed out on it as well. But that is the beauty, is that we can now be that man for ourselves, right? So you at 31, me at 34, we can reparent that little boy. And actually that's the key. That is the key, because then that will when we have kids, the way we treat our little boy, our internal little boy, will be the way that we treat our child. So if I'm still very hard on my little boy, which I know has been a shadow of mine over the years and which I'm changing, I can then be a better father when I have children, and so it's everything starts and ends with ourselves, how we interrelate with the world.
Wow. Okay, something for me to ponder on, and to perhaps re-listen to the podcast to really be able to kind of encapsulate what it means to, because it's a lot of like big topics, and like I'm exposed to it, but every single time like another man says it, I'm like, shit, like do I really understand what this other man means, or do I need to dive into a little bit deeper? All right, thank you for sharing this. Let me ask you, because we're towards the end of our time together, at least on this podcast. Was there a question that you wanted me to ask that I didn't?
That's a good question. No, I don't believe so. There's always the question, what is masculinity to me? But I feel like I've expressed that it's balance.
Yeah.
It's not the hard man, nor is it the soft man. It's the middle path. It's harmonizing those polarities of energies within us, which is a minefield, and which takes many a lifelong journey of work. But no, I don't have a particular question, but I'm open to one more from you if you want.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the masculinity. There is a lot of confusion around what it means to be a quote unquote man today. I think there's, like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of man children running away. I think majority of society tends to regard a mature male human being as a man, but I don't think that's exactly how I see, and I think how other men and women see that. What's your definition of a mature man? Maybe some of the qualities, or
going back to that comment I said earlier, which is a man that understands that the boy inside of him is a slave to the ego. So he can witness that playing out inside of him. He can see it for what it is. He doesn't punish it. He loves it. He nurtures it. He witnesses it. He reparents himself through it. He may not act in his mature man 90, 100% of the time. He may still act in his boy 45%, 40%, whatever. But he's aware of it, and he's on his journey to consciously evolve that part of himself. And he does it through love. He doesn't do it through separation. And even that is such an important part of what I believe is a mature man, is that he addresses his shadow with love. Actually, I think that's a mature human being, not just a mature man.
There we go.
Yeah.
I just to put something in before we finish, I did an acid trip back in Thailand, and then I did subsequently ayahuasca.
Of course you did.
Of course, yeah.
It's Thailand.
yeah. Anyway, I was totally unprepared for it. I wasn't looking for it to just kind of present as an opportunity. I pondered on it for a few days, and I said, you know what, let's do it. Like my buddy said, look, this is kind of supporting wheels for your spiritual development. So anyways, long story short, we went through the journey, and I don't think it was just because of the fact that I was under the influence of a drug, but once you start peeling all the layers, all the kind of layers of the onion, if you will, of the universe, and as corny as this sounds, I'm probably going to get some hate for it, but I don't care. At the core of everything is just love, like this presence, and everything starts with that. John Lennon.
That's not corny at all. That's not corny at all.
I don't think so as well, but I mean, again, being perhaps a little bit self-conscious, but there's a perspective when you look at it and when you hear it from somebody, and when you actually experience it, it just gives a whole different meaning to the actual experience that you had. So it is the heart of everything, I think.
Unconditional love is presence, is consciousness, is awareness. You know, it's the camera lens that looks at the yin and yang symbol. So you see the two kind of dragons of black and white dancing around each other, right? The energies. Yeah. And you see this kind of good and bad polarity, but who's watching that? Who's looking at that? Come back to the camera lens, come back, view through that is presence, that is love, that is awareness, that is oneness, that is everything. That's all there is. And it's unborn, and it can never die. It's with us all the time. We're just oblivious to the fact that it's there sometimes, unless you do some acid.
Well, there's always that door that, you know, you get into, exposed to the secrets of the universe that sometimes are very obvious, but yeah, we're blind to see them. All right, man. I'm sure we can continue talking like this for a couple of hours without totally unrehearsed, but I'm sure we can perhaps do it another time. People that resonate with your message and want to know more about you, what can they do that?
Yeah, so I run a men's work gathering globally called the Unmasked Man, as discussed at the beginning. So you can find us on www.theunmaskedman.co.uk or the.unmaskedman on Instagram. And it's about bringing men globally together, raising the consciousness of men, sitting together, coming together. And we hold circles regularly online. We were doing in person before as well, but obviously due to COVID. And then we also run trainings. And this is a big, big part of it, and something I'd really like to just spend a minute talking about, because the idea of the Unmasked Man is we want to light candles all around the world. My mission is to have a men's circle on every street corner. And so what we're doing is we're offering facilitation trainings where men come through and then they can go off and lead other men. So it's a 3-month journey. The first 2 months are about you, because how can you lead others if you haven't led or looked at your stuff and yourself? It's based on the archetypes. And it's a journey into you, and then transcending your limiting beliefs and rising into your power to give back. And it's a little bit like a yoga teacher training, right? Not everyone goes on to be a teacher. Some people just use it to learn the skills themselves to take with them on their everyday life. And I want an army of Unmasked Man facilitators all around the world giving back to men, and realizing that there's this work out there, because I needed it when I was in a bad place, and I want to offer it and bring it to people's awareness, especially amongst our age group. Because prior to this, most men that I sat with were, you know, late 40s, 50s, 60s. And I think the more we can bring it out and about in this age group, it's so important. So yeah, you can find us on the website, you can find us on Instagram, and we also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, which is private for men to express their emotions and come together.
Beautiful. Wow. I'm gonna make sure to put all the links in the description so people can link back and kind of find your work and your message, because it's definitely so much needed right now in our society.
Thank you, man.
All right. Any final thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you, Pavel. You're a beautiful man, and I love how you are so deeply knowledgeable about this work as well. And it's just, yeah, it's really inspiring, and I feel like I've made another friend today, so I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Delight in me, honors delight in you as well. All right, folks, that's all for today. Please go check out Alexander's website, The Unmasked Man, and guys, I'll see you guys in the next episode.